Sexually transmitted infections ending hai sexually transmitted infections STIs short form in le kichia hai de pen ka STDs le kichidia which is known as sexually transmitted diseases le kichidinga hai bana mindang khat le ani laya VD venereal diseases le kichidinga hai bana RTI reproductive tract infections le kichide amin de kha chamte le jenma STIs, sexually transmitted infections, STD, sexually transmitted diseases, VD, venereal diseases, RTI, reproductive tract infections. STD, sexually transmitted diseases, diseases which can be transmitted from one person to another person through sexual intercourse. Diseases that can be transmitted through sexual intercourse. They are known as sexually transmitted diseases. Definitions STDs those diseases that can be transmitted from one person to another person through sexual intercourse. STDs examples the textbook akipadinga bangsa bacteria in a cause disease disease it can be caused by bacteria, it can be caused by virus, and it can also be caused by parasite. Firstly, we'll see bacteria. Bacteria in a cause de bangbanga chien subding first pena gonorrhea. Gonorrhea penka it is a bacterial infection which is as gonorrhea penka that it can be transmitted from one person to another person through sexual contact penka it is caused by a bacteria. I mean the penka is in kohon gen plan ke dia textbook ale ki include law hi jakena nilele ha amin de penka chamte le chenma hai bana syphilis de penle it is a bacterial infection chlamydiasis bacterial infections it is transmitted sexually. Virus in a cause de bangbanga chien subdinga first pena most common and the most dangerous one is AIDS, which is caused by the virus HIV. Genital herpes the virus in a cause genital words it is caused by a virus. Hepatitis B the virus in a cause hepatitis B virus in a cause protozoan parasite in a cause trichomoniasis it is caused by a parasite. It can be transmitted from one person to another person through sexual intercourse. Textbook akipya hi zakin hating kha chamte tum legend. Example diseases tom yet thing la kha hepatitis B piento hepatitis B piento AIDS pienka it is also spread from one person to another person by sharing of injections needles. Normal person which is not infected by any diseases, by any hepatitis or AIDS infected person IP IP piento normal person share can be transmitted from the infected persons to the normal persons. So through sharing of injections, needles, these diseases can be transmitted from one person to another person. It is very common in drug users. Number 4 common surgical instruments with infected person instrument clean infected person clean normal the disease can be transmitted. Transfusions of blood through normal person infected person infected person assistant normal person then the normal persons will be infected with the diseases. And next, infected mother to fetus. Tun bang anu bang hay na nati khat vehitale atapianin khale vehidema through infected mother to child. So khade ka hon gen thak dinga STD sichi chana sexually transmitted diseases hiya bangchi define di chiale those diseases that can be transmitted from one person to another person through sexual intercourse de pen ka STDs akichia examples sa kanya ka hon gel teng teng hiya bangsa kai chakon hen to mai chiale akos de pen ki bat loza bacteria in a post de pen ka gonorrhea syphilis chlamydiasis virus in a post de ka AIDS genital herpes genital warts hepatitis B protozoan parasite in a post Depen ha trichomoniasis adang letam pyong dinga heiting na textbook kipya hitsaka heiting achwa ke focus ma achiale heina na be de kha I symptoms so banga hidi ichiale I symptoms so pena kha I heina na teng teng kha a common te ki la ya early symptoms ka honchi dinga early symptoms depen kha itching, fluid discharge, slight pain, swellings in the genital regions. Genital regions iti changina external sex organ gen hiya. External sex organs saka athak ko hilawale I banga pus like fluid dan the discharge chi ko mo wai bana slight na chi ko hilawale swellings ahong janga ha those are the early symptoms of all these diseases. Female tiakha numei tiakha bangchi ai chi ale they do not show any symptoms they are asymptomatic ichidinga females they pen kha Tangpua asymptomatic chi changa they do not show any symptom ahon so lo changwa anat na pen kha kimu he pa lo mo why bana because of these reasons because in females the although the person may have this diseases they do not show any symptoms plus symptoms asolo zako plus social stigma omzaka haya imikan khat infected with these diseases they do not go for proper treatment doctor dia vapayu lo mo vapai leo kha hongki expose le kha I banga I society ya ki an san di chi ya ja ki social stigma ki nei de hi zaka wai te athe zakwa I mi khan khat te pen kha proper treatment na dia le payu lo ba hong payu lo changwa bang chi ai chi ale I hong so changa kha I ya mild symptoms ani te pen kha it will leads to complications later on ma complications pen bang chi ai chi ale it will leads to a disease which is known as PID bangchi na ai chia le pelvic inflammatory diseases. Why bana disease dangli leads dia bang ai chia le PID why bana ectopia pregnancies ichi tema why bana numetia bang it will leads to infertility. Infertility pen kha den changina I endinga why sakin ka hona explain to an dinga in some cases it may also even leads to cancer hai zaka a symptoms neuchik akisho changale I treatment dia pai pa di mo hai te pen kha I AIDS hepatitis B why bana genital herpes gonorrhea chi te pen kha they are akir na di omlo winchin hima lile I anat na pen I aki ha multiply lo na dia I medications to tham di ma ilile ya syphilis chlamydiasis genital warts trichomoniasis kai te pen kha they are curable aki cure thei ma adang te pen kha completely curable lo ilile I maintain thei de Early symptoms of the most common symptoms of all these diseases are itching, fluid discharge, slight pain, swellings in the genital regions in the external sex organs. Early symptoms. It may lead to complications like pelvic inflammatory diseases. It may also lead to ectopia pregnancies, and it may also lead to infertility, and in some cases it may even lead to cancer. A symptoms they are asymptomatic, that means they do not show the symptoms. Plus, due to social stigma, many infected persons, they do not go for treatment. If they do not get proper treatment, then it will lead to more severe cases. Severe cases, PID, ectopia pregnancies, infertility, cancer. Disease prevent prevent first you should avoid having avoiding sex with multiple partner. Mi khat sang tam zoma mi ton to sex ni kon pen it should be avoided. Or mi tam pi unknown person mi strangers sex ni pen should be avoided. Number 2 we should always use condoms. Condom penha zat during coitus, during sexual intercourse, during coitus or during sexual intercourse. Hai condoms penha topic amasa ale igen hinta hai penha it is used for preventing unwanted pregnancy also. Plus, it is very helpful in preventing STDs, which is sexually transmitted diseases. If you have any doubts or symptoms, one should go to qualified doctor for early detections. Bangzaka early detections disease detect by there are some diseases which can be cured. A cure take lok to a disease maintain early symptoms early detections sexually transmitted diseases it is incidence it is very common, or it is very high in age group from 15 to 24 years. Kum som lenga aki pata kum som ni leli ki kal hai group age group te pena kha common pen ma engine hai age group pena kha nang letel khadina hi ziakena na nakivian poi mo ma mi teng kha vulnerable hi age group teng ai sang upazona pangzo tele vulnerable hi thowi le mostly it is very common among this age wise in order to avoid all these diseases, you can follow simple principles which is given in your textbook, like avoiding sex with multiple partners or unknown persons, and using condoms during coitus, and going to a qualified doctors if you have any symptoms of all this thing, or for early detection, so that you can get complete treatments and be cured from the disease. Abana infertility infertility bangchi na ai chiale infertility ichi changina couples te penin kha now nei theilawo why changa kha they are infertile mo infertility ichi changina it is the inability to produce children by couples in spite of unprotected sexual intercourse. condom chi tele zang tuan lo unprotected ki protect lo gilili they are unable to conceive why te pen kha that condition is known as infertility, the inability to conceive or to produce children in spite of in spite of unprotected sexual intercourse. Here, a reason the reasons could be physical. Physical the sex organs, one of the sex organs may not be functioning properly. For example, female tiabang ovaries a function egg or ovum produce if the fallopian tubes is blocked, if the fallopian tube is blocked, then the sperm and the egg cannot meet in the fallopian tubes, so the couples cannot conceive children. Physical idea, it can be due to congenital diseases. A sex organs what diseases that could be also the reason why they are not able to produce children. Due to using some kinds of drugs bangyam khat azatu omzaka ypienzaka, they are unable to produce children. It could be due to immunological, or it can also be due to psychological reasons. Couples meet now by in India also there are many couples who are unable to conceive or produce child. The inability to produce children, infertility it can be overcome or it can be corrected by using special kinds of health care. A problem treatment it can be corrected. Treatment if it is not possible or if it cannot be corrected, couples can be assisted to have children through special techniques. There are some special techniques which can be used by the couples to have children. Why techniques dia pen khat yan subdinga amasai na introduction in kahon gen masadinga why techniques dia bangai chiale textbook kha chilia ki gala first na depending ka IVF, in vitro fertilizations akichia yai pen dia azat thidinga why ban GIFT yai pen khale it is alang sa kan patinga in vitro IVF pen ka in vitro fertilization. Most common method GIFT give gamete intra fallopian transfer. AI artificial semination. ICSI, afford na dingina ICSI, yay intra cytoplasmic or cellular legitidinga sperm injection. Repeating infertility it is the inability to produce children in spite of unprotected sexual intercourse. Their inability could be due to physical reasons, congenital reasons, due to using some kinds of drugs which inhibits the productions of egg or the fertilizations of egg and sperm. It could be immunological as well as it could be psychological. Couples who are unable to produce child. In India also, there are many couples who are unable to produce child. However, this inability to produce child could be corrected by some special health care or by some kinds of treatments. If it is not possible, there are some special techniques which the couples can adopt to have children. Examples or special techniques for the conventional, first na IVF, in vitro fertilizations, GIFT, which is a gamete intra-fallopian transfer, AI artificial seminations, ICSI, which is intracytoplasmic injections. IVF, give AI ICSI hei te khat khatina tuna ian sukdinga why it sukmaina hei special techniques te pen kha adopt se lo wale India bang entaleng India aha now ngek akiem tu di omlo chim akiem tu di omlo orphanage home chi ko hi lawale anulapan adi lo apai chi ko hi waite khatam pi oma waite pen kha legal taka edopa ema danaija I etkol theile hidinga wai pen kha it is helping other also amasapenina a technique masapen special technique masapen yandinga why yade IVF here in vitro fertilizations. Hey, in vitro fertilizations akipatanangik piante pinha. Through this technique, if a baby is born, that baby is known as the test tube baby. Test tube technique a history new to masadina. The first successful experiment that was done in 1959 by Dr. Patrici. Yai pen kha a first experiment ko vela dia a first experiment ki bol masa pen ya yai 1959 na ki bol a doctor mina hiya le Petrucci hiya yai pen kha anange pen kha or anange ki china ki dia ite ki sama banga when male gametes and female gametes comes together fuse together it forms a zygote ichiboy mala zygote ki form masa pen ya yai zygote pen kha single cell engine it will undergo divisions to form an embryo form why embryo pen kha the embryo which was formed survived for only 29 days. Zygote hong ki forms embryo through cell divisions embryo is formed. Hey embryo pen kha it survived for only 29 days. Hey pen kha a first experiment ki bola hiya world's first test tube baby. Hey pen kha chu embryo pen de survive engine anange pen de piang mo he pen kha khovel adia I naunge test tube baby apyang na sa pena hiya it was in the year 1978 and it was done by this experiment or this was done by Drs. Steptoe and Dr. R. Edward he tigel in Pangkoma bola hiwa anawngek a test tube baby amindingina Louis Joy Brown kichi hai penka in the year 1978 India a first test tube baby penka it was done by Dr. Subhas Mukherjee in the year 1978 hai penta ki bangthoma and anawngek min pen hiale Kanu Priya Agarwal kichi Durga le kichi de Hey Benka, a background a history news about in vitro fertilizations tuna a technique and then how does in vitro fertilizations takes place tuna amasapenina the first steps would be the egg. Here in vitro fertilizations pen kha Tangpua bangzaka ki bola ichiale because the woman fallopian tubes is blocked why zaka yai technique ki bolma women fertilizations egg and sperm pen fertilizations fusions pen ko takes place ichiale it is taking place in the fallopian tubes if the woman's fallopian tubes is blocked then the egg cannot egg pen kha ovary ki form engine egg cannot travel through the fallopian tubes. Ek pen kha fallopian tubes apai the ke le ek hichin kahon kal dinga female gametes ek pen kha fallopian tubes travel the lawale it cannot meet with the sperm then fertilizations cannot take place and the woman cannot conceive ma yai conditions changa kha in vitro fertilizations ke zangzel yai in vitro fertilizations abang ki chai jale a woman ovary ki pata kha ek pen ovum or a egg pen kila here engine that means the ovary is functioning properly the only thing is that fallopian tubes is being obstructed there is an obstruct or there is a blockage ma a egg pen kha kila heading engine hey egg is taken out from the female's ovary from the female chinka hon galdinga hey the egg pen it gets fertilized. The egg is fertilized with the sperm taken from the father, from the male. The egg is taken from the female, and that egg is fertilized with the sperm which is taken from the male in vitro. In vitro. Bangchi na in vitro itiale. When we say in vitro, it means outside the body. Similar conditions, the temperatures, everything which is needed is there. In a laboratory, inside the laboratory, but outside the body of the organisms. Tun bang ya egg pen ka female laki patakila engine, sperm pen male laki patakila engine. Hetigal pen ka, it is fused together in the laboratory. In vitro. And after fertilizations, zygote would be formed, and this zygote would undergo several divisions, and this zygote or the embryo would be further implanted back, or it will be transferred back in the mother's uterus, or in the mother's body or uterus. It would be transferred back in the mother's uterus, where developments of the fetus would take place. If the zygote or the embryo is transferred back in the mother's uterus, if it is transferred in the uterus, then it is known as IUT, which is intrauterine transfer. The embryo which is transferred in the uterus through using IUT, intrauterine transfer, a zygote or embryo, it is at the 32 cell stage. If the zygote is at the 8 cell stage, then the zygote is put back in the mother's fallopian tube. This process it is known as ZIFT. ZIFT is zygote intrafallopian transfer. If the zygote is transferred back into the uterus, if the zygote is at the 32 cell stage, the zygote would be transferred back into the mother's uterus. This whole process is done through IUT, which is intrauterine transfer. And if the zygote is at the 8 cell stage, then the zygote is transferred back in the mother's fallopian tubes, which through a process which is known as ZIFT, which is zygote intrafallopian transfer. After transferring of the zygote back in the uterus or in the fallopian tubes, the developments of the fetus will be taking place, the nourishment, everything will be taking place in the female's body. Normal process would be taking place. The only thing is that due to the blocking of the fallopian tubes, the egg and the sperm cannot fertilize. After fertilization takes place, the zygote would be put back into the female's body, where normal developments of the fetus would be taking place. Here intrauterine transfer when the zygote is at the 32 cell stage and the zygote is put back in the uterus of the mother. ZIFT ZIFT zygote intrafallopian transfer in vitro fertilizations when the zygote is at the 8 cell stage. The zygote is put back in the mother's fallopian tube through ZIFT, which is zygote intrafallopian transfer. Next, gift ending gift gamete intrafallopian transfer technique it is usually used for female individuals. It is usually used for female individuals. Hey pinaka, if the female or the woman is the ovary is not functioning properly. If the ovary cannot produce egg, vagina, it is usually used. Plus, it is also used by some females who produce sperm antibodies. If the female produce sperm antibodies, then if the sperm enters the vagina of the females or the uterus, then these sperm antibodies would kill all the sperm and fertilizations cannot take place. In this technique, what happens is that the egg or the ovum is collected from the donor or the female individuals. Egg is collected from female individuals or from the donor, and this egg is inserted or it is transferred into the fallopian tubes, of another female, individuals who is unable to produce egg. Hey, female penka does not produce egg, does not or cannot produce egg. Fallopian tubes are transfer engine. In the fallopian tubes, fertilizations would take place and further developments of the fetus in the fallopian tubes, fertilizations plus further developments of fetus would take place. Give penka gamete intrafallopian transfer. It is usually used for female individuals where the female ovary is not functioning properly, so egg or ovum cannot be produced. Or if the female produce sperm antibodies, if the sperm antibodies are produced during that times also, give technique can be used. In this technique, the egg is collected from the female donor, from the female individuals or from the donor, and it is inserted or it is transferred into the fallopian tubes of another body who is not able to produce the egg. So fertilizations would be taking place and further developments of the fetus would be taking place in the female's body. And next AI it is artificial insemination. Artificial inseminations it is usually used for male partners. Artificial inseminations is usually used for the male partner. In this technique, what happens is that the male partner is suffering from one condition which is known as oligospermia. Oligospermia it is a condition where the sperm count is very less. Sperm count is very less. If they are male individuals if they are suffering from oligospermia their sperm count is very less. Fertilization it's so sama bangina female tiaka egg tomatom ki produce be khat hong two by both the ovaries. By one ovaries, one egg is produced. Male tiaka in one ejaculations, millions of sperms are being produced. Here oligospermia tiabang a sperm count pen katong it cannot get fertilized with the egg. In these conditions, what happens is that in this situation, the ejaculated sperm is taken. Ejaculated sperm is taken and it is artificially transferred or it is artificially put in the vagina of the female partner. artificial taka a sperm pen kha kilai engine it is put in the vagina of the female partner, or if it is not in the vagina, it is injected. The ejaculated sperm is injected into the uterus directly. It is known as IUI, which is intrauterine insemination. AI artificial insemination it is usually used for male partners. If the male partners is suffering from oligospermia, where the sperm count is very less, the ejaculated sperms will be taken artificially and it will be put back into the vagina of the female partners, or the ejaculated sperms would be injected back into the uterus directly. This process is known as IUI. IUI intrauterine insemination. Last na dinina ICSI. ICSI ichichangina intracytoplasmic, sometimes also known as cellular sperm injection. ICSI, the sperm is collected from the male and it is directly inserted into the ovum, and fertilization takes place. Zygote is formed and the embryo is formed. Developments will take place in the female body. Sperm is directly injected into the ovum.